Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world one book at a time.
Today, we are looking at a system that feels like it's fundamentally broken. We're diving into a contradiction so deep and so, puzzling that it has really just scrambled the traditional map of American politics.
We're tackling what the book calls the Great Paradox. And I have to admit, when I was reading the prep for this deep dive, I kept double-checking the dates on the research because the premise just seemed, well, it seems impossible.
It does.
We're looking at a question that, logically, it feels like it shouldn't even exist.
It's the question that keeps political strategists, sociologists, everyone up at night. Specifically, why do the communities that are arguably the most harmed by things like unregulated capitalism,
Right.
places dealing with industrial pollution, with sinkholes, stagnant wages, terrible cancer clusters, why do they so often and so vehemently oppose the very government interventions that are designed to protect them?
And we're zooming in specifically on Louisiana. This is the second poorest state in the U.S. It ranks near the bottom in almost every metric: health, education, child well-being.
And it's literally dissolving into the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
I mean, a football field of wetlands disappears every hour because of oil infrastructure canals and erosion.
And yet, and this is the paradox, Louisiana consistently votes against federal help. This is a state where 44% of the state budget
44%.
comes from Washington, D.C. Nearly half their money is federal aid. And yet the dominant political feeling isn't thank you, it's get out.
It's leave us alone. From the outside, it looks like people are voting against their own survival.
It does. And if you're an outsider looking in, the immediate sort of knee-jerk reaction is to say, okay, these people are being duped, or they just don't know the facts.
Or worse, they're just irrational.
Exactly. They're voting against their interests because they're irrational.
And that judgment, that quick assumption of irrationality, is exactly where the analysis usually stops and exactly where we go wrong. Today, we're tearing that assumption down. We are deep diving into Strangers in Their Own Land by the sociologist Arlie Russell Hochschild.
And her core argument is, well, it's uncomfortable. She says these voters aren't crazy. They aren't uneducated. They are acting rationally.
Completely rationally. But, and this is the key, they are using a currency that you and I might not be counting.
So this is a systems analysis, but the system isn't really about economics. The system is emotion.
Exactly. We are looking at the emotional operating system of a huge part of America. We're trying to understand the logic of a worldview that only seems contradictory because we've been looking at the wrong data points.
Before we really get into the mechanics of this system, let's introduce our guide on this journey, Arlie Russell Hochschild. She isn't a political pundit.
No, not at all. She's a sociologist from Berkeley, California.
And you really have to understand what Berkeley sociologist means in this context. I mean, she's coming from the deepest, bluest bubble in America.
She's an academic heavyweight. I mean, she's famous for coining the term emotional labor. She wrote landmark books like The Managed Heart and The Second Shift. Her whole career is about studying how we manage our feelings to fit into social structures.
So she is the ultimate academic outsider to the bayou. It's not just a different state. It's like a different political solar system.
Right. And this whole project starts around 2011. This is pre-Trump. It's the rise of the Tea Party. And Hochschild has this realization that she's living in an echo chamber. She realizes she fundamentally does not understand half the country.
And she identifies something she calls the empathy wall.
Yes, the empathy wall.
And I want to pause on that term because empathy gets thrown around so much, as a soft skill.
Right.
But she defines it very, very rigorously here.
She does. She defines the empathy wall as an obstacle to deep understanding of another person. It's that blockage that makes us feel indifferent or even hostile to people who hold different beliefs.
It's the mechanism that makes a liberal look at a conservative and just say, they're brainwashed.
Or a conservative look at a liberal and say, they hate America. It's that wall.
It's the point where you stop asking, why do they think that?
Yes.
And you start asking, what is wrong with them?
Exactly. So to scale this wall, she doesn't just, look at polling data or watch Fox News from her office. She moves.
She moves to Lake Charles, Louisiana.
And she spends 5 years there. 5 years. She goes to their church fish fries. She attends their political rallies. She sits on their porches and drinks sweet tea. She makes a conscious effort to see the world through their eyes, not to judge it, but to map it.
And the setting itself is a major character here. Lake Charles isn't just some random town she picked. It's the absolute epicenter of the paradox.
It's the heart of the whole contradiction. They call it Cancer Alley.
Which is just a terrifying nickname for your home.
It is, but they also call it the buckle of the energy belt. And it's a landscape of just extreme contrast. On one side, you have these beautiful bayou cypress trees, Spanish moss, incredible fishing, hunting, a sportsman's paradise.
Truly beautiful.
And then literally across the street, you have the massive, sprawling infrastructure of the petrochemical age, Sasol, PPG, refineries that light up the night sky like some kind of futuristic city.
And the data coming out of this region is just, it's staggering. The environmental damage is visible. We're talking about actual sinkholes, toxic waterways, signs that warn you not to eat the fish you catch.
But the central thesis Hochschild arrives at is that we cannot explain the politics of this region with facts and figures about pollution.
No, you can't.
If you go in there with a graph showing cancer rates and you expect to win an election,
Yeah.
you will lose. Every time.
So why? I mean, facts are facts. If the water is toxic, it's toxic.
Because politics, as she discovers it there, it isn't really about policy. Politics is an emotional delivery system. She argues that the division we see isn't about economic self-interest, not in the traditional sense. It's sustained by something she calls a deep story.
Okay, the deep story. This is the core system design. We need to unpack this because I think this concept changes how you view, well, everything in politics.
It really does. A deep story is a feels-as-if story. That's her term. It's the story your feelings tell, but in the language of symbols and metaphors. It removes the facts, it removes moral judgment. It just describes the subjective, emotional experience of the person living it.
So it's kind of like a fable, or the emotional logic of a dream.
In a way, yeah. It's the narrative you tell yourself to make sense of your world and your emotions. Hochschild realized that to understand the Tea Party voters in Louisiana, she had to first construct their deep story, and then, crucially, read it back to them to see if it resonated, to see if they said, yes, that's how it feels.
Okay, so paint the picture for us. What is the deep story of the American right, as Hochschild uncovered it?
All right, I want you to visualize this with me. Imagine you are standing in a long line. It's like a pilgrimage. The line winds up a hill, and at the very top, just out of sight but you know it's there, is the American dream.
Okay, I'm in line. I'm waiting.
You're standing there patiently. You're not pushing. You're not shouting. You've been working hard your whole life. You follow the rules. You go to church. You pay your taxes. You don't complain. And you believe deep down that if you just wait your turn, you will get there.
Seems fair enough. That's a traditional social contract, right? Work hard, play by the rules, get the reward.
But then you notice something. The line isn't moving. In fact, it feels like it's slowing down. Your feet are tired. You look at your paycheck, and it hasn't really gone up in 20 years. In real terms, it's actually gone down. You look at your community, the shops are closing. You're experiencing what sociologists call the stall.
That anxiety of being stuck. The fear that you're not just stalled, but you might actually be moving backward.
Exactly. But then, and this is the real inciting incident of the story, you see something that just makes your blood boil. You see people cutting in line ahead of you.
The line cutters. Okay, who are they in this story?
In this deep story, the line cutters are people who, from your perspective, haven't followed the rules. They are minorities who you believe are benefiting from affirmative action. They're immigrants, they're refugees, they're women who seem to be demanding special treatment in the workplace. You see them just jumping the queue.
Okay, I have to stop you there, because from a factual historical perspective, a liberal or a historian would immediately say, wait, they aren't cutting. They were historically kept out of the line entirely or shoved to the back, and we are just now trying to get them to the starting position.
Precisely. That is the factual rebuttal. But remember, we are in the deep story. This is about how it feels to the person standing in that line. And to them, they don't see historical correction, they see displacement. They see someone getting ahead who didn't wait like they did.
Okay, so I see these people cutting.
Wow.
And that creates this deep resentment.
And then you look up. You look up to the front of the line to see who's supposed to be managing all this. You're looking for the referee. And you see the federal government. In Hochschild's time there, it was personified by Barack Obama. And he isn't stopping the line cutters.
He's waving them in.
He's waving them in. He's smiling at them and turning his back on you. You, the one who followed all the rules. And you start to realize that your tax money is effectively paying for the people who are cutting in front of you.
And that's the betrayal. It changes the government from, say, a safety net into an active enemy.
An enemy of your progress. And then comes the final blow, the insult. So you're stuck, You're being pushed back, the government is betraying you, and then you see someone from the educated elite, a professor from Berkeley, a journalist from New York, a liberal from the coast. They turn around and look at you in line.
And what do they say?
They don't say, I see your struggle. They don't say, I'm sorry the line isn't moving for you. They look at you and they say, you're backward, you're ignorant, you're a racist bigot for even noticing the line cutters.
Oof. That completes the loop, doesn't it? It's not just economic pain anymore. It's moral condemnation.
It creates shame. And shame is a powerful, incredibly volatile political motivator. But now notice what's missing from that entire story.
Who's missing? Well, the boss isn't there. The company that stalled my wages, they're not in the story at all.
Exactly. The private sector is invisible. The corporations aren't in the line. They aren't the ones being blamed for pushing you back or for stalling your wages in this narrative. The villains are the government and the line cutters. This story, this emotional operating system, it explains everything. It explains why they can hate the EPA but love the oil company.
Because the oil company didn't call them a bigot.
And the oil company provides the jobs. The government, in their view, provides handouts to the line cutters.
This just explains the paradox perfectly. I mean, if you believe that the government is the entity that is actively helping people cut in front of you, why on earth would you vote to give that government more power or more money?
Why would you?
Even if you need the help yourself, even if you need Medicaid or disaster relief, accepting it feels like you're joining the line cutters. It feels like a loss of honor.
It is a loss of honor. And that's the currency.
Let's talk about that, because that seems to be the core currency here.
Yeah.
We're so used to thinking about politics in terms of dollars and cents. But in this system, the real currency is dignity.
Yes. And this brings us to how this whole emotional system reframes something like environmental harm. This was, for me, one of the most shocking parts of the research. You have people living in areas so polluted that they are physically sick, their animals are dying, but they refuse to identify as victims.
Right, because in this world view, being a victim is weak, being a victim is what the line cutters are.
Exactly. So to maintain your dignity, you have to reframe the pollution. Hochschild identifies a few archetypes of how locals do this. One is the cowboy.
The cowboy. This is the idea of stoicism, right? Toughness.
Yes. The cowboy basically says, look, the world is a dangerous place. Industry's tough. I'm tough. I can take it. Enduring pollution becomes a badge of honor. It proves you're not a snowflake. It proves you're willing to sacrifice for the team.
And the team here is the community, but it's also, in a way, the industry itself.
It creates this fascinating dynamic she calls the team player. To criticize the oil industry, even when it's poisoning your water, is seen as being disloyal to the team. You're a traitor to your community.
Let's make this more concrete with the people she met, because the cowboy and the team player aren't just abstract concepts. They're real people she spent years with. And their stories are, honestly, they're just heartbreaking.
They are. Let's talk about Lee Sherman.
Lee Sherman. I feel like his story is the one that just breaks your brain if you're trying to understand this from a purely economic or, rational self-interest perspective.
It really does. So Lee Sherman is a local in Louisiana, a former pipe fitter for PPG Pittsburgh Plate Glass. He's this big, rugged guy, a mechanic. And he tells Hochschild this story that is just harrowing. Back in the day, he was ordered by his bosses to dump toxic waste directly into the bayou.
Dump it. No filtration, no treatment.
By hand, under the cover of darkness. They had this thing they called the tar muggy. It was full of chlorinated hydrocarbons and lead, and he would drive it out, open the valve, and just dump it into the water that nature intended for fishing and swimming.
And he did this knowing it was toxic.
He did it because it was his job. He was ordered to. But here's the kicker. The chemicals made him sick. The fumes would burn him. He'd come home dizzy, nauseous. He got exposed to chemicals that completely destroyed his health.
So he's being poisoned by his own job.
He is. And eventually he gets too sick to work all his shifts. So what does the company do? Do they compensate him? Do they pay for his treatment?
I think I know the answer, and I don't like it.
They fired him for absenteeism. They kicked him to the curb after he poisoned himself on their orders.
Okay, so by any standard logic, Lee Sherman should be the poster child for the ETA. He should be leading the charge for regulation. He was literally used, poisoned, and then discarded by a corporation.
You would think. But Lee Sherman is an ardent Tea Party supporter. He hates the EPA. He holds up signs protesting government regulation.
Make that make sense. How does he reconcile that in his mind?
Because of the deep story, Lee Sherman's identity is built on being a hard worker, a loyal worker, a man who provides. Even though the company betrayed him, he mentally separates that specific company from the idea of the free market. In his mind, the company is like the parent figure.
The parent, yes.
The parent might be harsh, the parent might even be abusive at times, but the parent puts food on the table. The parent gives you life. The government is the nanny.
And nobody likes a nanny.
The nanny scolds you. The nanny tells you, don't dump that there, or you can't smoke that here. To Lee, needing the nanny is a sign of weakness. If he accepts that he is a victim of PPG who needs the EPA to come save him, he loses his status as a cowboy. He becomes just another person who needs a handout.
So to protect his own self-image, he has to protect the idea of the company.
Exactly. He frames his sickness not as a crime that was committed against him, but as a battle scar. It's proof that he's tough. Is proof he can take it.
That's a psychological weight that's almost too heavy to contemplate. So he stays in the system. He holds on to his pride, even if it kills him.
And it creates this fascinating and deeply tragic feedback loop. He votes for the deregulation that allows the next Lee Sherman to be poisoned, because voting for regulation would feel like admitting he was a sucker all along.
There's another story that really stuck with me, the one about Janice Areno. She's the team player archetype. She works for the industry. And she tells this story about a rubberized horse.
Oh, this story. This is the perfect definition of what sociologists call structural amnesia.
Tell this story, because it honestly sounds like something out of a dystopian novel.
So Janice lives near the chemical plants. She's driving Hochschild around, showing her the neighborhood, and she recounts almost casually this story about a horse that used to live in a nearby field that lost all its hair because of the chemical exposure.
It just went completely bald.
And its skin got tough and hard, like rubber. They called it the rubberized horse.
A rubberized horse.
And she frames this not as a horror story about pollution, but as a sort of quirky neighborhood anecdote. She rationalizes it. She says essentially, well, the plants have to go to the bathroom somewhere.
She compares industrial toxic waste dumping to needing to use the toilet.
It's a defense mechanism. Janice is a team player. She loves the company because it provided for her family. To confront the reality of the rubberized horse or the cancer clusters in her neighborhood, she would have to confront the morality of the industry she has dedicated her entire life to. So she compartmentalizes.
That's like a psychological firewall.
Exactly. Hochschild talks about how media outlets like Fox News can act as a firewall, protecting the deep story. But the firewall is also internal. It's something people build inside themselves to block out the facts that would threaten their sense of self. It blocks out the visual evidence of the hairless horse standing in the field.
We also had to talk about Mike Schaff, because he's different. He wasn't just sickened by the industry. He actually lost his home.
Mike Schaff's story is both tragic and fascinating. He lived in a community called Bayou Corn, a beautiful place. And then one day, the ground literally opened up.
A sinkhole.
A massive sinkhole, caused by a drilling company that had punched a hole into a subterranean salt dome. It swallowed 40 acres of swamp and forest.
Let's follow the entire community.
It destroyed it. Mike lost everything. He became a refugee in his own state. And get this, he's an environmentalist. He fights to protect the bayou. But he is still a Tea Party member. He still opposes big government.
Even though it was a lack of government regulation and oversight that allowed the company to drill so carelessly in the first place.
In his mind, the government is incompetent. He looks at the state's response to the sinkhole, which was slow, bureaucratic, and ineffective, and he says, see, government doesn't work.
Wow. That is a feedback loop from hell.
It is the distrust loop. An environmental disaster happens. The government, which has been defunded and defanged over decades, responds poorly because it lacks the resources. This confirms the belief that government is useless, so they vote for more deregulation.
Which causes more harm.
And the cycle repeats. It creates this vacuum of authority. And into that vacuum step two entities, the church and the company. They become the good parents. The company sponsors the local high school football team. They buy the uniforms. They're present in the community. The federal government is this distant, demanding, and in the deep story, deeply judgmental force.
You mentioned the psychological program. This is a term from General Honoré, who is a figure in the book.
Right. General Honoré is this rare systemic critic within Louisiana. He's the guy who coordinated the military response to Hurricane Katrina, and he calls it the psychological program, this idea where people are trained to believe they have a binary choice. You can have jobs or you can have the environment, not both.
And the narrative is, if you regulate us, we will leave. And if we leave, you and this whole town will starve.
It's basically a hostage situation framed as a partnership.
Wow.
We're all in this together, the company says, while holding all the keys to the local economy. And because of the deep story, because of that deep-seated fear of falling behind, of losing your place in line, people accept the terms. They accept the rubberized horse. They accept the sinkhole. Because the alternative, the liberal alternative of regulation, feels like a loss of their soul.
So this brings us to the political implications. The book was written over a period that led right up to 2016. And Hochschild makes a direct connection between this deep story and the rise of Donald Trump.
She does. And reading it now, it's incredibly prophetic. She attends a Trump rally in New Orleans in early 2016, and she describes the atmosphere. It wasn't just angry, it was giddy. She calls it the elation.
The elation.
Think about the deep story again. You've been stuck in line for decades. You feel ignored. You feel insulted by the elites. You feel, as the book's title says, like a stranger in your own land. And then a man walks onto the stage, and he doesn't talk about policy details. He doesn't have a white paper on economic reform.
No.
He points to the front of the line and says, I see the line cutters, and I'm going to kick them out.
He validates the entire story.
He offers emotional rescue. He tells them, you're not wrong to feel this way. You are not bad people. You are the victims of a rigged system, and I am the only one strong enough to fix it.
It's the release of all that accumulated shame.
Exactly. For years, these voters felt the shame of being called rednecks or deplorables. Trump took that shame and he turned it into pride. And that creates a political bond that no amount of fact-checking can ever break.
And this is where we get to what she calls the failure of technocracy. I think this is a huge takeaway for anyone listening who might be in that expert or technocrat mindset. We often think if I just show them the graph of how the EPA saved lives, they'll get it.
And it fails every single time. Because liberals and technocrats are trading in the currency of facts. They are trading in pollution data and economic statistics. But the people living the deep story are trading in the currency of honor and emotion.
It's like trying to pay for your groceries with monopoly money. The currencies just don't exchange.
And without that emotional legitimacy, the facts are perceived as attacks. If I come to you and say your industry is killing you and your entire identity is as a team player for that industry, I haven't given you a helpful fact. I've insulted your life's work. I've insulted your father's life work.
So the crisis in perception here, to tie it back directly to our channel's theme, is that perception isn't passive. It's an active construction.
Yes. Lee Sherman isn't just seeing the data about the EPA and ignoring it. He is actively constructing a perception of the EPA as an occupying force. She finds that this narrative goes all the way back to the Civil War, really. The federal government is seen as the North coming down to tell the South how to live its life. It's an invading army.
And you don't reason with an invading army, you fight it.
You fight it. You build the firewall. You tune into the media that tells you you're right, they're wrong, they hate you. It just reinforces the feedback loop over and over again.
So we have this whole system mapped out. The actors, like Lee and Mike, the incentives, like honor and identity, the narratives, like The Line, and these feedback loops of distrust. It seems airtight. It seems almost impenetrable.
It is remarkably resilient, and that's the great paradox. The system is designed to reject the nanny state even when the house is on fire.
Is there any hope in the book? I mean, is it just a tragedy from start to finish?
It is largely a tragedy. Hochschild doesn't offer a neat, tidy solution. She doesn't say, and here's the 5-point plan to fix it. But she does demonstrate something incredibly important. She demonstrates that the empathy wall can be scaled.
She did it.
She did it. Over 5 years, she became friends with these people, real friends. She didn't change their minds about politics, and they didn't change hers. But the hostility, the judgment, that melted away.
So the real crisis in perception is that we are looking at each other as political stereotypes, not as people with complex, deep stories.
We're looking at the behaviors, the voting, the rally signs, the shouting, and we're completely missing the underlying emotional machinery that's driving it all. Hochschild's point is that empathy is not agreement. Empathy is data gathering. You cannot understand the system if you don't first understand the feeling rules that govern it.
You have to turn off your own internal alarm system.
Right. When you hear the rubberized horse story, your alarm system goes off. You want to scream, that's insane, that's animal abuse, that's pollution. But if you scream, you just hit the empathy wall at full speed. You have to turn off the alarm and ask the question, what does this horse mean to you? Why is it necessary for you to see it this way?
That is an incredibly difficult thing to do in the moment.
It is the hardest thing to do. But in a world this polarized, it might be the only skill that actually matters.
So wrapping up, what does this all mean for us, for the person listening to this right now?
I think it means we have to stop asking the question, what is the matter with them? When we look at people we disagree with, we have to start asking a different question. What is the deep story they're telling themselves?
We have to try and see the line. Where do they think they are standing? Who do they think is cutting in front of them?
Exactly, because we all have a deep story. Liberals have one too, about the public square being looted by greedy corporations while the planet burns. If we don't recognize our own story, we can't possibly hope to understand theirs.
The tragedy, as you said before, is that this specific deep story creates a loop where the defense of honor accelerates the very destruction of their community.
It's a suicide pact made in the defense of dignity. They're defending a system, unregulated capitalism, that is visibly harming them because it is the only system that currently offers them a role, the cowboy, the team player, that preserves their self-worth. And until the alternative offers them dignity, not just help, the paradox will continue.
That is a heavy but absolutely essential insight. It's not about the money. It's about the meaning.
It's always about the meaning.
We're going to leave it there. A massive thank you to Arlie Russell Hochschild for this incredible work. It really does fundamentally change how you see the political map.
Absolutely. It's a masterclass in applying systems thinking to the human heart.
This deep dive was based on Strangers in Their Own Land, Anger and Mourning on the American Right by Arlie Russell Hochschild.
We highly recommend reading the full book to get the rich detail of these lives. It's truly unforgettable.
This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon.
For a shorter visual overview of this topic, see the mini explainer linked in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.